Okay, reading from the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, Book 1, Chapter 7, Text 150. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Atha prayāge gatvā mad-apekṣā-vilambitān munīn kṛtārthayānīti samanujñāpya mādhavam. Nārada then took leave of Mādhava. That almost rhymes. Nārada took leave of Mādhava. Had some beat. Who's Lord Krishna, and went to Prayāga thinking, let me bestow perfection on the sages who have waited so long for me to return. Purport: Krishna is called Mādhava because he is the moon that arose from the ocean of the dynasty of King Madhu. Mādhava is also the name of the deity of Krishna at Dashrameta Ghat, when Nārada had seen the sages worshipping the Lord and bathing daily at the confluence of the Jamuna, Ganga, and Saraswati during the month of Marg. Nārada wanted to return to Prayāga to share his realizations with those sages who, by taking shelter of Dashrameta Ghat, had obtained the shelter of Krishna. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Taksur Unmalatam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So greetings from the Govardhan Bhakta Seva Ashram. That's what I'm going to name this place. And the new upstairs room will be called the Govardhan Hilton. So that's my idea. It's really nice. The reason I have an audience today, because the reason why this is so special is because today we're going to finish the book. And when I say the book, it's book 1, but it's a different book. The Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta has 2 stories, so that first story is finished. So it's amazing what you can do when you're steady. I'm just thinking, I think for the last, 35 years or something, my first 20 years I was in Vrindavan, the last 27, half and half. I would just come out. It used to be 4. I used to come out. If someone would ask me, the way it would start, are you giving class? So Kalyana, right? Kalyana came, are you giving class? Yeah, I'm giving class. That's how it starts. And then I come out every day. And just, you cover so many books. It's amazing. So many books. I can just think everything from Jivadharma. I did Bhakti Sandarbha. So many of the 10th cantos. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the 1st canto, the 2nd canto, the 7th canto, the 6th canto. Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, this may be the 2nd time. You just go through so many books. And it's a great satisfaction to finish it. And this group that's here, congratulations to you, because most of the names have just been here every single time. And it's amazing how much you can learn if you're just steady. You know, you hear these subject matters. And this verse is just interesting because it mentions the Kumbh Mela, and that's coming up in January. And just today, the person who organizes it for ISKCON, who's a friend of mine, came to see me about something else. And he told me they have 3.5 acres in the main spot. And they, you know, I went years ago. It's amazing how Indians can organize for God. Can you imagine that 30 million people take bath at the same time in the same place? I still can't figure out how that's possible. And the whole city, because it's a confluence of 3 rivers, so rivers have banks because they get wider, and, you know, so at this time of the year, you know, there's quite huge area, and it's just amazing. And one of the most ecstatic things I ever had was bathing in the confluence of the Jamuna, Saraswati, and Ganga at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's freezing cold there too. And just then going to Mangal Artik. And I just remember hearing the holy name after that bath. It was almost, I felt like a cow in Vrindavan, because the cows in Vrindavan, usually the cows have their ears down. The cows in Vrindavan have their ears up, because when they hear Krishna's flute, they don't want to, it's like filled with nectar, they don't want to let it down. So I felt, I remember specifically, because I was feeling so much that it was Goloka Premadhan, Hari Nam Sankirtan, that the holy name was coming from Goloka Vrindavan. In the Mangal Artik, I was like, my head was like this, because I thought it was coming down. So this whole story started, it's a story within a story within a story, and most of you have already know it because we go, but the story at least told by the summary of the Bhagavatam given by Maharaj Parikshit to his mother Uttara in the last half day of his life, which parallels the Bhagavatam in message but not form. And everything is the message, and the message can take different forms. And Prabhupada said that's what realization is. What realization is means you understand the subject so deeply that you change the form and keep the message. And of course, your audience, you realize your audience has a different frame of reference. Maybe they're not as mature in spiritual life. Maybe they're from a different culture. So you have to change a different language. And different languages, I always explain, even in the same culture, there's different languages. People who are one generation, Gen Z and millennials, and my parents' generation, the greatest generation, seemed like it was all downhill from there. They call them the greatest generation. Because the whole generation went off to war to fight the evil Nazis, and they were like eager. They were signing up. Yeah, but different generations understand it. So anyway, we went on this journey together of Nārada looking for the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy. And then he winds up in Dwarka. And then we know the whole commotion that Nārada Muni caused. Somehow, I'm not going to repeat that story, but he caused such a commotion. He invoked in Krishna such deep feelings of affection and separation for the residents of Vrindavan that such deep feelings of separation that he fainted. and they thought he almost died. And then when that was all sorted out, then Nārada Muni, he was kind of still there. And usually Nārada Muni, he just comes into any place he wants. He doesn't. But he was a little shy to come in because he thought he committed an offense. So, but why isn't Nārada Muni coming in? And then Uddhava tells him. And then when Uddhava tells him, then Nārada tells Kṛṣṇa, this is why he's not coming, because it's a commotion. And then Kṛṣṇa says, no, it wasn't a commotion. And then explains that the mood of separation, which is externally appears to be suffering, is actually the greatest ecstasy. And the analogy given in the commentary is just like if someone put cold ice on you, it would create the illusion of burning, even though it was constitutionally cold. So separation creates the feeling and the illusion of suffering, although it's actually it's actually the highest love and therefore the highest ecstasy. So then we got to that point, and then Kṛṣṇa says you can have any benediction you want. And he asks for a very, very unusual benediction. Even Kṛṣṇa was puzzled why he asked for this benediction. He said, I pray that the devotees never feel they have enough of your love or your mercy, that they never feel satiated. Actually speaking, let me see. You get a preview of my, oh, this was a previous one. Yep, Monday morning greetings. You get the greatest benediction in the essence of devotional service. Sri Krishna was extremely pleased with Sri Nārada for inadvertently causing him to experience the taste of separation from his own devotees. He offered Sri Nārada any benediction he wanted. To those who are uninformed about the nature of bhakti, his choice will seem surprising. Nārada said, Sri Krishna Chandra, please grant that no one will ever feel he has enough of your mercy, your devotional service, or pure love for you, the reservoir of ecstasy. Here rests the essence of bhakti, never to be satiated. Why is this so? Again, I will resort to analogy to try to help make this very subtle point clear. Bhakti, or eagerness to serve God, is like the thirst for water. When one is thirsty, three things happen. First, one is eager for water. Next, one feels a lack of water and is naturally humbled. Lastly, for the thirsty, the taste of water is intensified. Similarly, in bhakti, these three things occur, the same things. One is eager or thirsty for bhakti. One feels a lack of bhakti and is humbled. And finally, one's taste for bhakti increases. In other words, what Nārada understood is that to feel satiated in bhakti means that the thirst, humility, and taste in bhakti will level off and eventually diminish. To further understand Sri Nārada's request that the devotees never feel satiated devotion, it is also helpful to understand the substantial difference in our analogy between the thirst for water and the eagerness for bhakti. When one quenches one's thirst, the eagerness for water, one's sense of being bereft of it, and one's taste for water all naturally decrease. But bhakti is itself the eagerness for God. And when one fills oneself with bhakti, the result is different than thirst being quenched. Rather than one's eagerness or thirst for bhakti being slaked or diminished, one's thirst for bhakti, one's humble sense of lacking it, and one's taste for bhakti naturally increases. Sri Nārada was thus in fact asking for the blessing that as one advances on the path of bhakti, that the intrinsic, insatiable nature of bhakti never has any limits. The essence of Sri Narada's inquiry, highlighting the insatiable nature of bhakti, also helps resolve
one's big glass.
Why are prem, heightened devotion, and utter humility considered practically synonymous? Can you imagine at the height of bhakti how deeply and infinitely one thirsts for Sri Krishna, and thus how deficient in bhakti and utterly humble one feels? And in the same regard, note that Sri Radha, who possesses the height of devotion, is also the epitome of humility. It also offers insight as to why Sri Chaitanya stressed in the third verse of the Shikshastakam that a humble person can chant always. Who can chant always? One who can chant with devotion. And who has such a taste for devotion? The humble who are thirsty for God. One who thinks himself lower than the grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, yet is always prepared to give all respect to others, can very easily always chant the holy name of the Lord. So in this auspicious month of Kartik, which infuses devotion into our hearts, let us pray to Sri Radha that indeed we are flooded with devotion, but in the spirit of Sri Nārada, let us pray we still will never have enough of it. So he asked for that benediction. Let the devotees never feel they have enough. And then Krishna says, well, what kind of benediction is that? Everyone knows that. Ask for something more. And then he asked that he could just travel around and spread Krishna consciousness, and that anyone who hears it just becomes filled and enlivened, etc. And then Krishna says, okay, so be it. And now Nārada then takes leave. And now he's going to go back. And Krishna also says, why are you asking that question about, you've already experienced that because you went to all these different devotees. You went to the Brahmin, you went to the king, you went to Lord Shiva, you went to Prahlad, you went to Hanuman. And you see that no one is ever feeling they have enough bhakti. You already saw that that's the nature of bhakti. So then you ask for something else. And then he asks that he can spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. And then he takes leave and he goes back to Prayāga. And this is also very interesting, this point that the sense of lacking, the sense of eagerness for bhakti or thirst for bhakti means that one feels that they're lacking it, and therefore it tastes more. And this also resolves one of the quandaries of how, when they point to the gopis as the highest recipients of Krishna's mercy, they appear so miserable. But the fact of the matter is, in that separation, how much they're eager for bhakti, and how much bhakti is in their hearts, and how much ecstasy they're having at the same time. So now he goes back, and thus Nārada started his journey, intoxicated with eagerness for pure devotion. Wherever he passed, he vibrated his veena and blissfully sang the glories of Krishna bhakti he had seen with his own eyes. When the sages of Prayāga heard the whole wonderful account from the mouth of Nārada, they once and for all gave up all interest in anything other than Krishna's service, for they were able to grasp the essence of what is of value. Tepi tan mukata sarvam shrutva tan mahabhutam sara sangrahino shesham anyat sadyo jahur dvidam. So now he tells these sages, and remember, it was a very beautiful Vaishnava scene. And Prabhupada made a very beautiful point about that. This is actually a real Vaishnava society. They all came out of, the beginning scene is, that they all came out of the waters at Kumbh Mela, and I have a little sense of what that feels like. And they were feeling this devotion. And they were feeling this eagerness for Krishna. And when you feel that eagerness for Krishna, it creates this thirst that you really don't, you're feeling so much devotion, but you're really feeling, I don't really have it. And then they each was saying, no, you're the topmost recipient of Krishna's mercy. No, it's the exact opposite of a material condition. Everyone is vying for the center, and everybody's trying to put everyone else in the center. So it's this beautiful scene, and now he comes back to these same souls from the Kumbh Mela, and they immediately understood his message. Immediately. Purport, whatever traces of attachment to material work and knowledge still lingered in the hearts of the sages were at once cleansed away when they heard Narada's account of his travels. They were wise devotees, able to recognize the essential truth in what Nārada told them. So sometimes you need a preliminary experience to actually understand something else. That's why it says in the Upanishads, Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir Tata Deve Tarakaro, that one who has implicit faith in the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord, the import of the Vedas are revealed. So the import of the Vedas is to become free from false ego. So unless you have some kind of experience of that, by taking shelter of a Vaishnava, taking shelter of Krishna, having some experience of that, you won't have the lens to actually see that in the Vedas. So these sages, they're so advanced in spiritual life that when Nārada came with the essence of the Vedas, Vedaishya Savaham Eva Vedyo Vedanta Vid Veda, that the essence understand Krishna. When he came back with that, they immediately, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavamam Papadyate, Vasudeva Savamiti Samahapam. After many, many lives, Bahunam Janmanam, they understand this. So they were able to understand this. That's why of the 4 types of people that come to Krishna, the Jnani is the best. Because the Jnani already knows, is not asking for anything in relationship to the body. So when they actually come to Krishna, they can give themselves fully. Kevalam paramam dainyam avalambhyasa shikshaya Shriman Madana Gopala Charnabjam Upasita. Entering a mood of great and single-minded humility, they began worshiping the lotus feet of Sri Madan Gopal according to Narada's instructions. So Dainya, humility, again, because there's such a thirst and such a hankering for bhakti, that as the thirst for bhakti increases, the thirst makes you feel like you don't have it, even though that's what bhakti is. So it creates this utter humility, this intensity of devotion. It creates this utter humility. So they entered into this mood of that mood, and they began to worship the deity there. Purport, it is an axiomatic principle of devotional service that until one rejects everything insubstantial, one cannot grasp the essence of reality. The first deity that we worship in Vrindavan is Madan Mohan. And Madan Mohan, there's 3 aspects of philosophy. Sambandha Gyan. Sambandha Gyan means several things, but basically it means metaphysical knowledge. What is your concept of reality? And to understand your concept of reality, it's called Sambandha Gyan, because you have to understand your relationship with reality. So, madan. So why is that sambandha gyan, that knowledge of relationship, that knowledge? Why do we worship Madan Mohan? Because Madan Mohan means the conqueror of lust. So before actually understanding, here it says that you can't grasp reality if you're too absorbed in matter. The sages at Prayāga, graced by Nārada with ultimate enlightenment, now obtained the total humility required for entrance into the mystery of prema bhakti. By honestly thinking themselves unworthy of worshiping the personality of Godhead's lotus feet, they earn the priceless treasure of his favor. When one is humble, one can appreciate what he's given. If you're entitled, you never feel love no matter how much you're given. Like if a child is spoiled, the parents can give them the world. The child never feels any type of, is that light? Okay. The child never feels any type of love. But if the child's humble, then even if the father pats the child on the head, they're feeling love. So your capacity to feel love depends on your humility. And that's why that verse, Trinadapi, one who is humble, he can chant always. And the reason he can chant always is because he's feeling love. And the only thing you can do always is love. Because every other activity is not pleasurable in itself. Bhakti is susukam kartam avya. It's joyfully performed because it's love. Every other activity, you're doing it for a goal. So the process is not pleasurable. The goal is pleasurable. Mata gopa kishoram tam tvam charasa rasam buddhim tat prema mohitabi shri gopi bir abhita britam amusham dasyam icchanti tadrisha prema bhangibi nityam bhajashva tam nama sankirtan parayana. Dear mother, because what's happening, just to go back to the beginning, is Maharaj Parikshit finished the Bhagavatam, and now he's ready to fix his mind. And the example of prema in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is Bhishma Dev, that person who spoke on so many subjects, fought in so many battles, now fixes minds. Prema is described sandrandana visheshatma. Sandra means metal. There's nothing in between. So your consciousness becomes so concentrated. So that's the purpose of reading the Bhagavatam. You become concentrated. You know it is anartha, you know it has no value. You become concentrated. So he heard the whole Bhagavatam and he realized the message. He heard it and he realized, and he was ready to fix his mind, and then his mother came. But she was so advanced, she was just as interested in, or maybe more, in hearing what he realized than even seeing her son. So because he had this realization, he said, no, now I have only like a half a day to explain to you the whole Bhagavatam. So he condenses the message, the same message, we described this, the same progression of the Bhagavatam is a progression of different levels of devotees, from Hanuman from Prahlad to Hanuman to the Pandavas, it's that same progression. So he presents the whole thing in this interesting story and to give it to his mother. And now he's kind of finished the story and he tells his mother, you as well should also worship this young cowherd boy. He is the ocean that yields the nectar of the rasa dance, in which divine gopis fully surround him. This message is for everyone listening. Entranced by pure love, you should cherish the desire to be the servant of these gopis. You should constantly worship him in pure love as they did. And you should dedicate yourself to the sankirtan of his names. So this is like the conclusion. I feel like this is for me and all of us. We've gone through this whole book. Now we get the message. You should always worship Krishna. He's the ocean that yields the nectar of the rasa dance, in which the gopis surround him, entranced by pure love. You should cherish the desire to be the servant of these gopis. You should constantly worship him in pure love as they did, and you should dedicate yourself to the sankirtan of his names. Purport, having finished his story, Parikshit Maharaj is summing up the lessons his mother should learn from it. She ought to absorb herself fully in Krishna consciousness, which in all of its countless varieties derives from and reflects the most perfect love of the gopis who join Krishna in the rasa dance. God in his original form is a young, playful cowherd, and in this form he enjoys his original pleasure. When the Supreme Lord appears in any other form, that appearance is secondary, manifested to satisfy particular devotees. So Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan, is God when he can be himself. And all other manifestations are just reflections of himself to satisfy particular devotees. You know, someone wants you as the Father, you appear as the Father. Someone wants as... But Krishna is a Kila Rasamrita, where he's the full embodiment of all relationships. When the Supreme Lord appeared, after hearing Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta from Sukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit understood this transcendental fact, and to make his mother also understand it, he recounted this first part of the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta. So he understood this from the Bhagavatam, and then he repeats the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, and it's the same conclusion. Perhaps Mother Uttara, the widow of Krishna's nephew, might feel uncomfortable assuming the mood of the gopis, at least in public. Therefore, Parikshit advises her more aptly to strive to become a servant of the gopis. Even I know devotees with very advanced meditations. They said it's better, unless reaching what's called Vastu Siddhi, to be in the mood of observing it rather than you're participating in it. So, as Parikshit points here, the principal method for becoming a servant of the gopis in Vrindavan is Krishna Nam Sankirtan, immersing oneself in hearing and chanting the names of the divine cowherd boy of Braja, especially the name Krishna. This is the best means to practice worshiping him in pure love, and it is the symptom of one who's achieved the treasure of praying. So what's so nice about chanting the holy name, it's a sadhana and it's a sadhya. It's a practice to get to perfection, and then in perfection you chant. So you chant to get perfection, and out of perfection you chant. You chant the holy name to realize your relationship with Krishna, and when you realize your relationship with Krishna, the main devotional activity is glorification or kirtan. Gopinam, we only got 5 more verses. Gopinam mahima kaschit tasham eko pisakyate namaya swamukhe kartum meru makshikayat yata. I cannot describe with my own words even one of the glories of the gopis any more than a mosquito can swallow Mount Meru. I love pure, transcendental, authorized fanaticism. It's allowed. Aho Krishna rasa vrishta sada namami kirtaye Krishnasya ta priyanam cha vaishmi yadinam gurur mama. Oh, but my spiritual master is fully absorbed in the loving moods of serving Krishna. He can constantly glorify Krishna's name and those of Rukmini and Krishna's other beloved devotees. His spiritual master is Sukadeva Goswami, who's the parrot of Srimati Radharani. Oh, Krishna rasa, avishta, sada, Krishna rasa. Oh, Krishna rasa, the taste of Krishna consciousness, avishtas, constantly absorbed. He's constantly absorbed. The gopis were consumed by the expansive flames of the wondrous blazing fire of love for Krishna. If my guru chants the names of these gopis and recalls a gopi's distinguishing qualities, he too is touched by sparks shooting forth from the flames of the intense fire, and he at once becomes greatly agitated. Therefore, he has to avoid pronouncing the gopis' names. One time when Srila Narayana Maharaj came to America, and it's such an interesting story because at that time, I was staying in the Tawako temple, and Narayana Maharaj didn't know anybody, and he had a whole group. So one of my godbrothers, who actually joined in 26 Second Avenue, his name Jairam, had a big house in Tawako and put him up in Tawako. And Satyaraj asked him a question, why Srimati Radharani's name is not mentioned in the Bhagavatam. Because this Radharani's parrot, the emotion. When somebody's choked up, a really emotional, someone died, and if you just mention their name, we have, those instances in our life where there's just something so emotional. We just have to kind of, like compose ourselves, right? We have to compose ourselves. So imagine what it's like for Sukadeva Goswami to compose himself. So he never mentioned the name of Radha. So this is confirmed. This is probably, if my guru chants the names of those gopis and recalls he is too touched by the sparks shooting forth from the flame of this intent. He once became greatly agitated, therefore he has to avoid pronouncing the gopis' names. And look how beautiful this story is. Because how many ways, like to understand something, when you present something, it's like an axe, they say, when you present something from different angles. I know you're a communicator, you got to communicate something. You got to give different examples, different ways, and you sharpen and you sharpen and you sharpen. So there's how many ways? First they ask Uddhava, right? You're the greatest devotee, and Uddhava says, no, it's the residents of Vrindavan. And then Rohini and Balaram say, no, it can't be them. They're suffering too much. But why are they suffering? They're suffering out of love for Krishna. So that also points to them. And then Satyabhama and Devaki say, no, they describe how Krishna, even in his bed, what's going on here? It's Vrindavan. It's part of the rasa. Things were going good, and now, purport, the gopis' love for Krishna is unique. It reaches the ultimate extremes of ecstatic intensity, and so it can be compared to a blazing fire. Everything the gopis experience in their life shines with the light of their Krishna prema, and the flame-like ecstasies from their prema burns their heart, as flames burn a person who comes too close. Sukadeva Goswami is intimately attuned to the mood of the gopis, and therefore he is vulnerable to the danger of becoming too ecstatic. In the helpless state of Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, he might sometimes become incoherent in chanting the glories of the Lord, the devotional practice that is his own specialty and the only support of his vital force. So he's the exemplar for kirtan, Sukadeva. If Sukadeva utters any of the gopis' names, his heart is once filled with the remembrance of the gopis, and the scorching flames of Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta makes him unable to concentrate on his service. Therefore, while reciting Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta to Maharaj Parikshit, he avoided mentioning the gopis by name. Many times in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, Sukadeva speaks of the activities and ecstasies, but not the names of individual gopis. And there's many verses that explain that, where he says one gopi, one gopi, one gopi. Someone might conjecture that reverential respect for the gopis was Sukadeva's reason for not speaking their names. But Parikshit here denies this by specifying that Sukadeva was Krishna Ras Vishta, always intoxicated by the spontaneous bliss of Krishna consciousness. It was not out of shyness that Sukadeva was reluctant to mention the gopis by name. It was out of fear of losing control of himself. Next, if you follow my advice and with pure love take shelter of the gopis and their master, Lord Sri Krishna, then mother, I promise that by Krishna's mercy you will be able to understand something of the gopis' greatness. If you follow my advice, this is for all of us, and with pure love take shelter of the gopis and their master, Lord Sri Krishna, then, O mother, I promise that by Krishna's mercy you will be able to understand something of the gopis' greatness. Without first scientifically understanding the special qualities of the gopis that distinguish them from everyone else, one cannot develop the true desire to become a servant of the gopis, nor beyond that can one realize the supreme truth of their ecstatic worship of Krishna. With this idea in mind, Parikshit offers the promise to his mother. In what he had spoken, he could not have explained to her everything about the gopis' glories, nor could she have been expected to understand completely what he had told her. To gradually realize the deep subject matter, she would have to follow the standard process of devotional meditation. First, she would have to begin practicing worship of Krishna while following in the footsteps of the gopis, as her son had outlined in his narration. By this practice, she would acquire some partial understanding. That understanding would help her worship become mature, which in turn would allow her to know the transcendental reality in more detail, so that finally she would achieve the perfection of prem bhajan. In this way, by worshiping the Supreme Lord, one comes to know the greatness of the gopis, and by following the greatness of the gopis, one advances in the worship of the Lord. This Shastra, Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, declares, throughout that pure devotional service to Krishna can be realized only by one who has specific knowledge of both the personality of God and the process of bhakti. Nonetheless, when one has learned the glories of the gopis, the greatest of all the Lord's devotees, one will automatically understand the Lord and his devotional service without any effort. So basically, it's just summarizing what happened. Systematically, this is the system. And now the last verse. With the help of this most excellent narration about the Supreme Lord, which shows who has received the essence of the Lord's mercy, one could understand him for certain. Anyone who for any reason takes shelter with faith of this narration will quickly attain love for Lord Sri Krishna. So congratulations to all the people that listen to this. To Parikshit's promise, Sukadeva Sanatana Goswami adds his own. By taking shelter of the Supreme Lord's devotees, one can understand their special glories, which further leads one to enter particular methods of devotional worship and finally attain pure love for the Lord. This sequence of perfection is wonderful enough in itself, But even more wonderful is that one can achieve the same perfection simply by hearing this Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta with faith. The purpose of this book is to make known how Sri Krishna Chandra, the original personality of Godhead, acts as the unlimited source of super excellent compassion. Sincere devotees will quickly rise to the goal of Krishna prema, especially when they conscientiously follow the authorized principle of sadhana bhakti. Thus ends the 7th chapter of part 1 of Srila Sanatana Goswami's Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, entitled Purna, the Complete Perfection. I'll be lecturing here. People, if you're free, you come. If you have other things. But on this other book called Obstacles of Devotion, there's one sadhu, he's famous in Barsana for chanting from 5 to and he wrote one book, and it's translated in English, in simple English, where he discusses the 5 main practices of devotional service, and the mood is very profound. It's just really about not criticizing anyone, and this is the person who's really so absorbed. So Jamuna Jaya, you get to say any appreciation here?
Hare Krishna Raj. Wow,
Yeah.
it's so. I love the point about you were saying about with faithful listening. It feels so satisfying to have taken the journey and to get here to the end. And there's always that beautiful encouragement at the end of these things that anyone hears that, anyone, and so that means all of us. Hi everybody there in Vrindavan. Hello, and Govardhan. Hello. I really so appreciated the way you pointed out the importance of going to Madan Mohan first. I mean, I know we do, but I hadn't really made the click of that. That's the destroyer of lust. And before we can really enter Vrindavan, we need to get rid of that. So I really appreciated that is the reason we stop there and the importance of stopping there, in particular in Vrindavan. So I really appreciated that.
That's great. Anybody else like to say hello?
Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Questions or no?
Not today.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, hello.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Okay, anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna Gurudev.
Hi, Mo. Nice.
Thank you for the class. Thank you for Vrindavan
Okay.
Darshan.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Tota Gopinath here. Great to see and hear from you.
Oh.
Haribo.
Great to see you. Okay.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, Govinda. Thank you for class.
Hi, Mo.
Haribo.
Okay, we'll end for today.